The massive ship appeared over New York City on a Tuesday morning when most people were drinking their coffee and getting ready for work. It was 3 miles long and shaped like a dark triangle that blocked out the sun. The shadow it cast made the entire city looked like it was under an eclipse. People stopped walking and pointed up at the sky. Cars pulled over. Traffic lights kept changing, but nobody moved. Ambassador Zikthara stood on the bridge of the invasion ship and looked down at the tiny humans below. His 4 arms were crossed behind his back as he studied the readouts on his screen. The humans had primitive weapons, and their technology was hundreds of years behind what the Dominion used. Their planet was divided into different nations that fought each other over resources and land. This should be easy. Commander Velther, Zikthara said to his second-in-command, "Begin the standard surrender protocol. Display our weapons. Make them understand they cannot fight us." Velther was a veteran of 50 conquests. He had seen 1,000 different species surrender when they realized how powerful the Dominion was. Some tried to fight at first, but they all gave up eventually. The pattern was always the same: fear, then desperate attempts to negotiate, then complete submission. "Yes, Ambassador," Velther replied. "Opening weapon ports now." The ship's belly opened up, and massive energy cannons appeared. They pointed down at the city below. The weapons could turn the entire area into glass in seconds. Every species in the galaxy knew what those weapons meant: surrender or die. But something strange happened. Instead of panic, instead of military forces scrambling to respond, a single human voice came over the communication channels. "Unknown vessel, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the United States Navy. Welcome to Earth. We would like to talk." Zikthara's mandibles clicked in confusion. Welcome to Earth. The human was welcoming them? This had never happened before. Species either attacked immediately or begged for mercy. They did not say welcome. "Captain Morrison," Zikthara replied, "you will surrender your planet's military forces immediately. Any resistance will result in the complete destruction of your cities." "I understand you might be concerned about our intentions," Morrison said. His voice was calm and steady. "But we're not here to fight you. We're curious about who you are and where you come from. Would you like to land somewhere safe where we can meet in person?" Velther looked at his readings. The human military was not mobilizing. Their weapon systems were not targeting the ship. Their aircraft were keeping their distance, but not in attack formations. It was like they were being ... polite. "This is wrong," Velther said quietly. "They should be afraid. They should be preparing to fight or trying to escape." "Perhaps they are too primitive to understand the threat," Zikthara suggested, but he was not sure. The humans had detected their ship immediately. They had opened communication channels, using the correct frequencies. They clearly understood technology well enough to know what they were looking at. Morrison's voice came through the speakers again. "I'm transmitting coordinates to a landing site at the United Nations headquarters. It's a neutral location where representatives from all our nations can meet with you. We have medical facilities nearby if anyone on your crew needs attention. We've also prepared food and water, though I'm not sure if our biology is compatible." Food and water, medical facilities. The human was offering to take care of them. Zikthara had conquered 400 worlds, and no one had ever offered to feed his crew. "Ambassador," Velther said, "I recommend we proceed with the bombardment. This behavior is ... unusual. It might be some kind of trap." But Zikthara was curious now. In all his years of conquest, he had never encountered anything like this. The humans were not following any known pattern. They were treating the invasion like a visit from friends. "Prepare a landing party," he decided, "but keep the weapons trained on the city. If this is a trap, we will show them what happens to those who deceive the Dominion." The shuttle landed on the roof of the United Nations building. Hundreds of humans had gathered in the streets below, but they were not carrying weapons. They were holding signs and flags. Some were taking pictures. Children were sitting on their parents' shoulders to get a better view. Zethara stepped out of the shuttle with 4 guards. The humans had kept their promise about the landing site. There were no hidden weapons, no military ambush. Just a small group of humans waiting to greet them. The woman who stepped forward was tall with brown hair and kind eyes. She wore a white coat that Zethara recognized as the uniform of a scientist or doctor. "I'm Dr. Lisa Carter," she said. "I'm a xenobiologist, which means I study life from other planets. I've been hoping to meet someone like you my entire life." She was smiling. Not the fake smile of someone trying to deceive, but a real smile of genuine happiness. Zethara had sensors that could detect lies and fear. This human was excited to meet him. "You study life from other planets?" Zethara asked. "But you have never encountered life from other planets." "That's right," Dr. Carter said. "We've been looking for signs of life in the universe for decades. We've always wondered what other intelligent species might be like. What is your biology like? How do you reproduce? What kind of environment do you come from?" No one had ever asked Zethara these questions. Species that were about to be conquered usually asked about mercy or negotiation terms. They did not ask about biology and reproduction. We come from a world with high gravity and thick atmosphere," he found himself saying. "Our species reproduces through genetic fusion of 3 individuals rather than 2. "Fascinating, Doctor," Carter said, and she meant it. "That must create incredible genetic diversity. Do you have different family structures because of that? And the high gravity, does that affect your bone density?" Zethara realized he was having a conversation. Not an interrogation or a demand for surrender, but an actual conversation about his people and their culture. It was pleasant. "Dr. Carter," Captain Morrison said, "perhaps our guests would like to rest and eat something before we continue. It must have been a long journey." Our guests. The human had called them guests, not invaders or enemies. Zethara looked at his guards. They looked as confused as he felt. "Yes," he said slowly. "It was a long journey." They were led inside the building to a large room with comfortable chairs and tables full of food. The humans had prepared dishes from all over their planet, not knowing what the aliens might be able to eat. Dr. Carter continued asking questions about their technology, their culture, their journey through space. Other humans joined the conversation, all of them showing the same genuine curiosity and friendliness. Zethara found himself talking more than he had in years. He told them about the beauty of his home world's triple sunsets. He described the singing crystals that grew in their mountains. He explained how their ships navigated through space using quantum tunneling. It was only when he looked at the time that he realized they had been talking for 4 hours. 4 hours of conversation with beings they had come to conquer, and not once had the subject of surrender come up. "Commander," Velther said quietly, "the crew is asking about the invasion timeline. When do we begin the occupation?" Zethara looked around the room. The humans were still asking questions, still showing interest in everything he said. Dr. Carter was sketching his anatomy in a notebook and asking if she could take measurements for her research. Captain Morrison was offering to show them around the city. "Tell the crew to maintain position," Zethara said. "We need more time to assess the situation." But the truth was, he was no longer sure what the situation was. These humans had done something that no species had ever done before. They had made him forget, for a few hours, that he was a conqueror. They had made him feel like a person instead of a weapon, and that feeling was more dangerous to the Dominion than any weapon they could have used. 6 months after the first contact, The Dominion war fleet arrived at Earth with 200 ships and orders to complete the conquest that Sekfara had somehow failed to finish. War Commander Dexmore had been chosen specifically for this mission because he had never failed to break a species' will to fight. His record was perfect. 137 worlds conquered, 0 survivors who refused to submit. Admiral Susan Blake watched the alien fleet appear on her screens from the command center buried deep beneath the Pentagon. She had spent the last 6 months preparing for this moment, but not in the way anyone expected. Instead of hiding Earth's military capabilities, she had done something that made her own generals think she had lost her mind. She had broadcast everything. All stations, she said into her communication device, begin transmission of Package Alpha on all frequencies. Package Alpha was not a weapon or a battle plan. It was a collection of videos showing what humans did when they were not fighting. The first video showed a hospital in Chicago where doctors and nurses worked 18-hour shifts to save the lives of strangers. The second showed a group of firefighters in California running into a burning building to rescue a family they had never met. The third showed teachers in Bangladesh continuing to hold classes in a refugee camp, making sure children could still learn even when their world had fallen apart. Dexmore received the transmissions on his command ship and stared at the images with confusion. Why were the humans showing him their weaknesses? Why would they broadcast footage of their people helping others instead of their weapons and military strength? Commander, his tactical officer said, the human fleet is taking defensive positions around their planet, but they are not targeting our ships. Are they surrendering? Dexmore asked. No, sir, they are. Waiting. Dexmore had never encountered a species that simply waited. They either attacked or surrendered. They did not just sit there and show him videos of their people being kind to each other. Begin orbital bombardment of their military installations, he ordered. Perhaps they will understand the situation better once they see you and our weapons. Can do. The first target was a military base in Nevada. The energy beam from the Dominion ship turned the entire complex into melted metal and glass. The second target was a naval base in Norfolk. The third was an Air Force base in Germany. Each strike was precise and devastating, designed to show the humans that resistance was impossible. But something strange happened after each attack. Instead of military forces rushing to defend the remaining bases, the humans sent medical teams and rescue workers to help anyone who might have survived. They pulled wounded soldiers from the rubble. They treated burns and injuries. They risked their lives to save people who were already doomed. Sir, the tactical officer said, we have a problem. The humans are. They are treating our crash. Survivors. Dexmore looked at the screen. During the bombardment, 2 Dominion fighters had been shot down by human air defenses. The pilots had crashed in a field outside Denver. Dexmore expected to see the pilots captured or killed. Instead, he saw human medical teams working desperately to save their lives. Dr. Paul Stevens knelt beside the alien pilot whose breathing apparatus had been damaged in the crash. The pilot was unconscious and bleeding from multiple wounds. Stevens did not hesitate. He connected the alien to a human oxygen system and began emergency surgery right there in the field. Why are you helping me? The second pilot asked in broken English. He was conscious but badly injured. Because you need help, Stevens replied without looking up from his work. That's what we do. The pilot stared at him. In Dominion culture, enemies were enemies. You conquered them or they conquered you. You did not heal them. But I was trying to kill you, the pilot said. I know, Stevens said. But you're not trying to kill me now. Right now, you're just someone who needs medical attention. The footage of human doctors saving alien lives was broadcast across the Dominion fleet. Dexmore watched his own people being treated with the same care that the humans gave to their own wounded. He had seen many strange things in his career, but he had never seen anything like this. "Commander," his communications officer said, "we are receiving reports of unusual behavior from several ships in the fleet." "What kind of behavior?" "Some of the crew members are questioning the mission, sir. They want to know why we are attacking beings who are trying to help us." Dexmore felt a chill run through his body. Questioning the mission was the first sign of what the Dominion called corruption. It happened when a species was exposed to ideas that weakened their loyalty to the Empire. It was why the Dominion usually conquered worlds quickly, before the local population could influence their troops. "Issue immediate orders to all ships," he said. "No crew member is to watch the human broadcasts. Anyone caught viewing the transmissions will be court-martialed," but it was too late. The infection had already begun. In the city of Denver, the occupation force led by Captain Rexmol had taken control of the downtown area. They expected to find resistance fighters and hidden weapons. Instead, they found something that made no sense at all. Mary Johnson was a third-grade teacher at Elementary School 42. When the aliens occupied her city, she gathered the children who had been separated from their parents and brought them to her classroom. She continued teaching them reading and math and science, just like she had before the invasion. But some of the children were not human. They were young aliens whose parents had been killed in the bombing. Their own people had left them behind, considering them casualties of war. Mary took them in just like she took in the human children. "Miss Johnson," asked 8-year-old Lucy, "why do the alien kids look different?" "Because they come from a different planet," Mary explained. "Just like how children from different countries on Earth look different from each other." She taught the alien children English and taught the human children some basic words in the alien language. She helped them all with their homework. She made sure they all had food and water. She treated them exactly the same. Captain Rexmol watched this through his surveillance equipment and felt something he had never experienced before. The emotion was so strange that he had to look it up in the Dominion database. The closest translation was guilt. "Captain," one of his soldiers said, "what are your orders regarding the human teacher?" Rexmol stared at the screen. A woman was reading a story to a group of children who included 3 of his own species. She was teaching them about friendship and kindness and helping others. The young aliens were laughing and playing with the human children like they were all part of the same family. "No action," he said quietly. "Leave her alone." "Sir," I said, "leave her alone. She is not a threat." But Rexmol knew that was not true. Mary Johnson was the most dangerous threat the Dominion had ever faced. She was not dangerous because she had weapons or military training. She was dangerous because she was changing the way his soldiers thought about the enemy. At night, Rexmol received a message from his superiors demanding a report on the occupation. He was supposed to describe the level of resistance and the progress of the subjugation process. Instead, he found himself writing about a teacher who treated alien children like they were her own. He deleted the message and wrote a standard report about pacification procedures and population control. But he kept thinking about the children in that classroom and the woman who had risked everything to keep them safe. Across the planet, similar scenes were playing out. In Tokyo, a group of human volunteers were helping alien soldiers who had been injured in a vehicle accident. In London, a chef was teaching alien troops how to prepare human food so they would not get sick from eating the wrong things. In Cairo, a group of children were playing soccer with young alien soldiers who had never seen the game before. Each act of kindness created a crack in the Dominion's control. Each moment of compassion made it harder for the alien troops to see humans as enemies. The invasion was supposed to be quick and brutal, but instead it was becoming something else entirely. Rexmol realized that his perfect record was about to be broken, not by human weapons or military strategy, but by something far more dangerous. The humans were not trying to defeat the Dominion army. They were trying to save it, and the worst part was, it was working. His own troops were beginning to care about the people they were supposed to conquer. They were starting to question orders that would harm innocent humans. They were becoming infected with the most dangerous idea in the galaxy, that enemies could become friends. The siege continued, but it was no longer a siege. It was becoming something the Dominion had never seen before. It was becoming a conversation between two species about what it meant to be alive in the universe. And that conversation was about to change everything. The defection began with a single act of kindness in the ruins of Chicago. Private Donnie Martinez was on patrol through the destroyed buildings when he heard sounds coming from a collapsed apartment complex. He climbed through the rubble and found an alien soldier trapped under a fallen beam. The soldier was badly injured, and his breathing was shallow. Martinez could have left him there. He could have called for backup to take the alien prisoner. He could have put the soldier out of his misery. Instead, he did something that would change the course of the war. He shared his water dot. The alien soldier's name was Yextal, and he was a scout for the Dominion forces. He had been separated from his unit during a human counterattack and had been trapped for 2 days. He was dying of dehydration, and his wounds were infected. "Why are you helping me?" Yextal asked as Martinez carefully lifted the beam off his legs. "Because you're hurt," Martinez said, "and I can help." It was such a simple answer that Yextal almost did not understand it. In Dominion culture, you helped your own kind because they shared your genetics and your mission. You did not help strangers, and you certainly did not help enemies. Martinez used his medical kit to treat Yextal's wounds. He gave him food and water. He even helped him contact his unit so they could come pick him up. When Yextal asked why he was not taking him prisoner, Martinez just shrugged. "You're not going anywhere with those injuries," Martinez said. "And I'm not going to shoot an unarmed wounded soldier. That's not what we do." Yextal had been a soldier for 30 years. He had conquered 12 worlds and seen every kind of warfare imaginable. But he had never seen anything like this. The human was treating him like a person who deserved care and respect. When Yextal's unit found him, he was supposed to report the location of human forces and any intelligence he had gathered. Instead, he found himself thinking about the young human who had saved his life. He gave his commanders false information about human troop movements, leading them away from Martinez's position. It was treason, but Yextal could not bring himself to betray someone who had shown him such kindness. The infection spread quickly. Yextal began sharing what he had learned with other soldiers in his unit. He told them about human compassion and how they treated their enemies. Some of the soldiers dismissed it as propaganda, but others began to pay attention to what the humans were actually doing. Within a week, 3 more soldiers from Yextal's unit had begun secretly helping human civilians. They shared food with hungry families. They warned people about upcoming raids. They even helped repair damage that their own forces had caused. Captain Kex Reel noticed the change in his troops immediately. They were less aggressive during patrols. They showed reluctance to follow orders that would harm innocent people. They asked questions about the purpose of the mission that no good Dominion soldier should ask. "Why are we here?" one of his soldiers asked during a briefing. "These humans are not a threat to the Dominion. They are not trying to conquer us or steal our resources. They just want to live in peace." Kexrel should have reported the soldier for sedition. Instead, he found himself wondering the same thing. He had been watching the humans for months now, and he had never seen a species that seemed so content. They did not seem to want to dominate other species or expand their territory. They seemed to want to learn and explore and create things. Breaking point came when Commander Nancy Wright established what she called integration camps. These were facilities where humans and aliens worked together on reconstruction projects. The idea was to show that the two species could cooperate instead of fighting. The first integration camp was built outside of Detroit. Humans and aliens worked side by side to rebuild a school that had been destroyed in the bombing. They shared tools and techniques. They taught each other their languages. They ate meals together and told stories about their homeworlds. Kexrel was ordered to inspect the camp and report on security threats. What he found instead was something that challenged everything he believed about conquest and warfare. The humans were not trying to convert the aliens to their way of thinking. They were not trying to make them give up their own culture. They were simply treating them as equals. They asked for the aliens' opinions. They listened to their ideas. They worked together to solve problems. For the first time in his military career, Kexrel felt like he was part of something constructive instead of destructive. He was helping to build something instead of tearing it down. Dr. Ken Brooks was a human psychologist who had been studying the integration process. He made a discovery that would change everything. The aliens were not just learning to cooperate with humans. They were remembering things about their own culture that had been forgotten. The Dominion system works by suppressing individual emotions and connections, Brooks explained to his colleagues. But exposure to human behavior is reawakening these dormant traits. The aliens are not just defecting. They are remembering what they used to be. Brooks had been interviewing alien defectors and had learned that the Dominion had not always been a conquering empire. Thousands of years ago, the alien species had been explorers and artists and scientists. They had been curious about the universe and eager to learn from other species. But over time, their leaders had convinced them that cooperation was weakness and that conquest was the only path to security. They had systematically destroyed their own capacity for empathy and creativity, turning themselves into perfect soldiers. The humans were not changing the aliens. They were helping them remember who they really were. The first mass defection happened on a Tuesday morning when Captain Kexrel's entire battalion walked away from their posts and surrendered to the human forces. They did not surrender because they were defeated. They surrendered because they no longer wanted to fight. "We do not wish to be conquerors anymore," Kexrel told the human commanders. "We wish to be builders." The news of the defection spread through the Dominion fleet like wildfire. Entire ships began abandoning their positions. Soldiers threw down their weapons and asked for asylum. Officers who had served the Dominion for decades turned against their own commanders. War Commander Dexmore watched his invasion force dissolve before his eyes. He had come to Earth with the most powerful military fleet in the galaxy, and he was being defeated by teachers and doctors and volunteers who had never fired a shot in anger. "Sir," his tactical officer said, "we have lost contact with 60% of our ground forces. The remaining ships are reporting widespread mutiny among their crews." Dexmore stared at the tactical display. The human military was not advancing. They were not pressing their advantage. Instead, they were setting up refugee camps for the alien defectors. They were providing medical care and food and shelter. They were treating enemy soldiers like they were guests. What kind of species defeats their enemies by taking care of them? He asked. No one had an answer. On the Dominion homeworld news of the defections was causing panic among the leadership. Supreme General Zarthok called an emergency session of the War Council. "The humans have developed some kind of psychological weapon," he declared. "They are using it to corrupt our troops and turn them against the Empire." "What kind of weapon?" asked Admiral Bexvor. "We do not know," Zarthok admitted. "But it is more dangerous than any technology we have ever encountered." It is making our soldiers forget their duty to the Dominion. The truth was far worse than a weapon. The truth was that the humans were not trying to destroy the Dominion. They were trying to save it. They were showing the aliens that there was another way to live, another way to relate to other species, another way to exist in the universe. And once the aliens remembered what they had lost, they could never go back to the old way of thinking. The war was not over, but the nature of the conflict had changed completely. It was no longer a battle between two species. It was a battle between two ideas about what it meant to be alive. Dominion represented conquest and control and the suppression of individual thought. The humans represented cooperation and creativity and the belief that different species could learn from each other. The aliens were choosing the human way, not because they were forced to, but because they remembered that it was also their way from before the Dominion had made them forget, and that choice was spreading through the galaxy like a virus of hope. The Dominion's solution was brutal and final. They would completely destroy Earth and every colony where humans had made contact with alien defectors. They would burn away the infection before it could spread any further through their empire. Supreme General Zarthok himself would lead the final assault fleet, and when it was over, nothing would remain of the species that had threatened to destroy everything the Dominion had built. But the infection had already spread farther than anyone realized. On the Dominion homeworld of Kethmar, young aliens who had been watching the Earth broadcasts in secret began to do something that had been forbidden for 1,000 years. They began to create art. It started with simple drawings scratched into the walls of underground tunnels. Images of the triple sunsets that their ancestors had once celebrated. Pictures of the singing crystals that had been destroyed to make room for weapons factories. Portraits of families embracing, something that had been replaced by military formations generations ago. The art was discovered by security. Chief Vexcall during a routine inspection of the worker districts. He should have arrested the artists immediately. Creating non-functional objects was a crime punishable by death. But when he saw the images, he felt something that had been buried so deep in his people's culture that he had forgotten it existed. Wonder. The pictures showed his world as it had been before the Dominion. They showed his people as they had been before they became soldiers. They showed a way of life that he had heard about in whispered stories from his grandmother, but had never believed was real. Instead of reporting the artists, Vexcall found himself protecting them. He began to meet with them in secret, asking them to create more images. He wanted to see more of what his world had looked like before the war machine had consumed everything. The resistance spread to other worlds. On Kexthul, factory workers, who had been manufacturing weapons for 500 years, began to ask why they never built anything that helped people live better lives. On Zet Minor, soldiers who had been trained from birth to kill began to question why they had never been taught to heal. Former Dominion scientist Keek Vera had been studying the human broadcasts for months, trying to understand what made them so dangerous to the Empire. What she discovered changed everything she thought she knew about strength and weakness. The humans possess something we lost long ago, she reported to a secret gathering of scientists and philosophers who had begun to question the Dominion's methods. They have the ability to sacrifice for others who are not genetically related to them. They help strangers. They care for enemies. They work together even when they disagree. The gathered aliens listened in fascination as Keek Vera described human families who adopted children from other countries. She told them about human soldiers who risked their lives to save civilians they had never met. She explained how humans could work together on projects that would benefit people they would never know. We believe this was weakness, Keek Vera continued. We believed that caring only for your own genetic group made you stronger. But the humans have shown us that this kind of caring actually makes a species more adaptable and resilient. They survive because they help each other survive. The revelation was spreading through the Dominion like wildfire. The Empire's strength had always come from perfect unity and total obedience. But now, beings throughout the galaxy were beginning to remember that there had been another way to live, on Earth. Helen Davis was a communications specialist who had been working with the human resistance since the invasion began. She had been studying the Dominion communication networks, looking for weaknesses. What she found was something much more powerful than any weapon. She discovered that the Dominion had been suppressing communications between different worlds for centuries. Families had been separated. Friends had been scattered across the galaxy. Children had been taken from their parents to be trained as soldiers. The Empire had deliberately broken all the connections that might have made their people question orders. Helen realized that the most powerful thing she could do was to help people reconnect with each other. She hijacked the Dominion communication network during a shift change, when security was lightest. Instead of broadcasting propaganda or military intelligence, she transmitted a simple message in the universal language that all Dominion species understood. We know you are afraid. We know you are tired of fighting. Come home. The message was only 12 words long, but it was transmitted to every ship, every base, every world in the Dominion Empire. It was heard by soldiers who had not spoken to their families in decades. It was heard by workers who had forgotten they had ever had homes. It was heard by commanders who had spent so long following orders that they had forgotten they were capable of making their own choices. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Communication channels that had been closed for centuries suddenly came alive with messages. Families began searching for each other. Friends tried to reconnect. People who had been isolated by the military system began to remember that they were not alone. The effect on the Dominion military was catastrophic. Soldiers began deserting not to join the human resistance, but to go home to families they had not seen in years. Entire fleets abandoned their posts to return to their home worlds. Officers who had spent their lives enforcing the Empire's will began to question whether the Empire was worth preserving. Captain Rick Foster had been leading the integrated human-alien defense force on Earth when the final Dominion assault fleet arrived. He had expected to fight the most difficult battle of his life. Instead, he found himself witnessing something that no one had thought possible. Half of the incoming Dominion ships began broadcasting surrender signals before they even entered Earth's atmosphere. The other half found themselves facing not just human forces, but their own people who had chosen to defend the planet they had once tried to conquer. This is Captain Foster of the Earth Defense Force. He transmitted to the remaining Dominion ships. You are facing a combined fleet of humans and Dominion defectors. We do not want to fight you. We want to help you remember who you were before the Empire made you forget. The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. It was not a fight between enemies trying to destroy each other. It was a fight between people who wanted to preserve the old way of thinking and people who wanted to create something new. The Dominion hardliners fought desperately, but they were fighting against their own people as much as against the humans. When alien soldiers saw their own brothers and sisters on the other side, many of them simply stopped fighting. The war ended not with a great victory, but with a great awakening. The Dominion Empire that had controlled the galaxy for 1,000 years simply dissolved as its people chose freedom over conquest, creativity over destruction, love over fear. But the real battle was just beginning. An entire galaxy of beings had to learn how to live without the system that had controlled every aspect of their lives for centuries. They had to remember how to make their own choices, how to care for each other, how to build instead of destroy. And they had to do it while facing the hardliners who refused to give up the old ways and would fight to restore the empire that had given their lives meaning. The galaxy was free, but freedom was more dangerous and more difficult than anyone had imagined. It required courage, not just to fight, but to hope. It required strength, not just to survive, but to change. The humans had started something that would reshape the entire universe. They had shown that the most powerful force in existence was not the ability to conquer, but the ability to inspire others to become more than they thought they could be. And that lesson was about to be tested in ways that no one could have predicted. The war ended not with humanity's victory, but with something much more difficult and dangerous. The galaxy was free, but freedom was a concept that most species had forgotten how to handle. Entire civilizations had to learn how to make their own choices after centuries of being told what to do by the Dominion. President Linda Hayes had been elected in Earth's first post-contact election on a platform that confused most human politicians. She did not want to rule the galaxy or impose human values on other species. She wanted to help them remember their own values and rebuild their own cultures. "We are not here to be anyone's leaders," she said in her inaugural address. "We are here to be friends and helpers. The galaxy does not need human dominance. It needs cooperation between equals." The first challenge was practical. The Dominion had controlled trade, communication, and transportation between worlds for 1,000 years. When the Empire collapsed, the infrastructure that connected the galaxy began to fall apart. Planets that had depended on food shipments from other worlds began to starve. Medical supplies ran out. Communication networks failed. Hayes established the Galactic Cooperation Council with headquarters on Kepler 442b, a planet that had been neutral during the war. The council was not a government. It was a coordination center where representatives from different species could work together to solve problems. The first meeting was chaos. Hundreds of species that had been enemies for generations were suddenly trying to work together. They spoke different languages, had different values, and disagreed about almost everything. Many of the delegates had never even seen members of other species except as conquerors or conquered. Dr. Greg Mitchell, a cultural anthropologist from Earth, was appointed as the council's first coordinator. His job was not to make decisions for the different species, but to help them learn how to make decisions together. "Every species here has something valuable to contribute," he told the assembled delegates. "The Zekthul are master engineers. The Kexmor are brilliant healers. The Velkari are natural teachers. We need to learn from each other instead of trying to dominate each other." The first successful collaboration was the restoration of the food distribution network. The Zekthal had the technology to transport goods between worlds. The Kexmor had the knowledge to preserve food for long journeys. The Velkari had the organizational skills to coordinate the deliveries. Working together, they solved a problem that none of them could have handled alone, but not everyone was happy with the new arrangement. Throughout the galaxy, former Dominion hardliners were organizing resistance movements. They believed that the Empire had been the only thing standing between civilization and chaos. They wanted to restore the old order, even if it meant destroying the species that had caused its collapse. Warlord Mexthel had escaped Earth during the final battle and established a base in the Outer Rim territories. He gathered together the most loyal Dominion officers and began recruiting soldiers from species that missed the stability of the old system. "The humans have destroyed everything we built," he told his followers. "They have filled our people with weakness and sentiment. They have turned warriors into artists and scientists into dreamers. This cannot be allowed to continue." Mexthul's forces began attacking the integration colonies where humans and aliens were working together. They bombed schools where different species learned together. They destroyed hospitals where human doctors treated alien patients. They targeted anyone who represented the new way of thinking. The attacks created a crisis for the Galactic Cooperation Council. Some delegates wanted to respond with military force. Others wanted to try to negotiate with the hardliners. A few suggested that maybe the resistors were right, and the old system had been better. Engineer Carol Thompson had been working on a project that she believed could help solve the problem. She had designed integrated colony ships where multiple species could live and work together as equals. The ships were not just vehicles for transportation. They were communities where different species could learn from each other and build something new together. The hardliners are afraid of change, she explained to the council. They think that working together makes us weak. We need to show them that cooperation makes us stronger. The first integrated colony ship launched with volunteers from 12 different species. They were not refugees or soldiers. They were families who wanted to build a better life for their children. They were scientists who wanted to explore the universe together. They were artists who wanted to create something beautiful. The ship was called the New Beginning, and it became a symbol of what the galaxy could become. Children from different species played together in the same playgrounds. Scientists from different worlds worked together in the same laboratories. Artists from different cultures created works that no single species could have imagined. The success of the New Beginning inspired other colonies. Soon, there were dozens of integrated communities throughout the galaxy. Each one was different, reflecting the unique combination of species that had chosen to work together. But the hardliners continued to attack. They saw the integrated colonies as a threat to everything they believed in. They could not understand how different species could live together peacefully when the Dominion had taught them that conflict was inevitable. The final confrontation came when Mextel's forces attacked the New Beginning directly. They wanted to destroy the colony ship and everyone on it as an example of what happened to those who rejected the old ways. The battle was fierce, but it was not won by superior weapons or tactics. It was won by something the hardliners had not expected. When the attack began, the colony ship sent out a distress signal. The response came not from military forces, but from dozens of other colony ships and planetary defense forces. Species that had been enemies for centuries came together to protect the community that represented their shared hopes for the future. The hardliners found themselves outnumbered not by humans, but by their own people who had chosen a different path. The resistance collapsed not because it was defeated, but because it was abandoned by those it claimed to represent. Mextel himself was captured by a joint force of humans and former Dominion soldiers. When he was brought before the council, he expected to be executed or imprisoned. Instead, he was offered something he had never experienced before. "You can join us," President Hayes told him. "You can help us build something better than what we had before. You can be part of the solution instead of part of the problem." Mextel rejected the offer and was exiled to a remote planet where he could live according to the old ways if he chose. But many of his followers accepted the invitation to join the new galactic community. Years later, Ambassador Peter Collins stood before the First Galactic Assembly and looked out at representatives from over 1,000 different species. They were not there because they had been conquered or forced to attend. They were there because they had chosen to work together. "We have learned something important," he said. "The most powerful force in the universe is not the ability to destroy, but the ability to create. It is not the ability to conquer, but the ability to inspire. It is not the ability to force others to submit, but the ability to help them become more than they thought they could be." The galaxy was not perfect. There were still conflicts and disagreements. There were still species that preferred isolation to cooperation. There were still problems that no one knew how to solve, but something fundamental had changed. The default assumption was no longer that different species must be enemies. The default assumption was that they could work together if they chose. To try, the humans had not conquered the galaxy. They had not imposed their will on other species. They had not created an empire to replace the Dominion. Instead, they had done something much more powerful and much more dangerous. They had shown the galaxy that change was possible. They had proven that species could evolve beyond their current limitations. They had demonstrated that the future could be better than the past. The story that parents throughout the galaxy tell their children is not about the great war that ended the Dominion. It is about the day when the galaxy remembered what it meant to hope. They tell them about the humans who refused to become like their enemies, even when facing extinction. They tell them about the aliens who chose to remember who they had been before the Empire made them forget. They tell them about the communities where different species learned to live together as friends. But most importantly, they tell them about the choice that every generation must make. The choice between fear and hope, between destruction and creation, between conquest and cooperation. The humans had made that choice when they welcomed their would-be conquerors as guests. The aliens had made that choice when they remembered that they could be more than soldiers. The galaxy had made that choice when it chose freedom over security. And now it was up to each new generation to make that choice again, every day, in every interaction with those who were different from themselves. The most powerful lesson the humans had taught the galaxy was not about technology or warfare or politics. It was about the simple, radical idea that every being in the universe deserved to be treated with dignity and respect, and that idea, once released into the galaxy, could